I'm gonna put up a survey that I posted on our community just to kind of get you guys to, tell me what you think about this particular topic here. Um, I wanted to ask you is since COVID, do you see more technology problems, less, or about the same? A, B, or C? Let's see what some of you guys are kind of coming up with here. A, B, or C? Do you see that there's more? Okay, so Bernice said C. Okay, all right. And so about the same. Okay. And let's see what other people are saying here. Okay, so Allison thinks, it's a little bit more. Okay, so we have C and A. So I'm going to share with you now technology and problems with it has been shared a lot. And so what my hope is that when you leave here in 30 minutes, you will get some new ideas about technology and the problems it can pose our children, our families from more of a systems point of view. So I think you'll like today. I'm going to be sharing the 4 lies that have been exacerbated by technology that kids are really getting into that's impacting the whole family. And if some of you are parents and counselors, or some of you are parents, this is near and dear to my heart because I'm struggling with this issue with my kids. So as I prepared for this and research it and do this, it helps me as well. So thank you for coming today. And this topic, I think, will be really interesting for us today. So let's get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Since COVID, I'm voting for A, and here's why. What I have seen is that with COVID, it presents a stressor to the family, which is called a situational crisis, where people are unprepared. So what has happened is during COVID with lockdown, there was a lot more technology because you weren't getting out in nature, more lockdowns and more stress, and so there was more technology and the potential for addiction. And so what I'm going to do is that I know sometimes this happens, sometimes it doesn't, but the topic that I'm talking about today happens to pivot nicely to the free webinar I'm doing on June 16th. So today I'm going to share a little bit about the why. And then on June 16th, I'm going to be sharing more of the how, what to do with it. So the how in this one will be a case study. I will bring a video clip of the case. We'll discuss it together. So I'm going to be talking about the why today and then more of the how on the 16th because I will need the full hour to discuss it. So we talked about this just a moment ago. So one stat that's a little bit, stats I take in context because numbers are just information. But one of the things that some of the studies are pointing out that the more time that the kids are spending on social media, it increases the odds of mental illness. Now, I'm going to propose a paradigm, and I'm going to see what you guys think at the end when we do question and answer. A lot of times people point to technology as the cause. I see it more as exacerbating, accelerating, and medicating the problem, but not often the root cause. So let me give you a couple of examples. Like when I see a child with anxiety disorder, and I know that they're on social media a lot, it medicates the anxiety and it doesn't allow them to develop coping skills without it. So it's kind of like gasoline on a fire. Depression is another example. I may be depressed. The root cause may be something other than technology, but the technology is accelerating the depression or the isolation because now instead of interacting with people, I'm isolating more. So I'm going to make a case for how family systems trauma is connected to technology. And at the end, if you would type in your chat bar or while you're thinking of it throughout, I'll circle back and answer questions or comments about today's talk. So if you've not met me before, every Friday for this community that I'm a part of, and I'm a proud member of this community, I love this community, I talk to Dan and B and say, on Fridays, could I do Family Solution Trauma Fridays, where I can just come in for our community and talk about, family trauma and help people become a family trauma expert because um, this community is about toolboxes, toolkits, and that's my DNA. When I wrote my books, um, like this one here, it's toolboxes, scripts, and so I get to share my life's work with this community every Friday, and I'm blessed to do it. So the information you're going to get today is from the Family Systems Trauma Model. Now there's 12 techniques, and I'm going to focus on number 7 today with technology, safety first. We talk about safety first a lot, but we have to identify what we mean by it and then what to do with it, because I'm a big believer that it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to have food, clothing, and shelter before you can have psychological needs met. In the same way, we have to deal with safety before people psychologically can really get healed. And I think when technology is involved here, we've got to look at it. And then next week, when I give the full hour, I'll be actually showing you a strategy called the Safety Stressor Questionnaire that will get at these safety issues. And one of the things on the list is technology. Other things on the list are like bullying, suicide ideation. So if you like today, I hope to see you next Wednesday. So today, I'm going to focus on the why. Knowledge is empowering. And so as you and the slide share is your handout today. And so think as you're looking at this, how might I deliver this information to my parents? I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, like how do you take the why and go to the how, or really like trauma informed to trauma responsive. So I'm going to connect family systems trauma to these 4 lies that are fueled by technology, problems, or addiction. Then, like I said, the other tools that you will get that will pivot off of this next week will be how to recognize an I family, how we can recognize how nature deficit disorder is playing a part into fueling this problem. And then finally, next week, I'll be giving you kryptonite solutions to technology addiction. So today is an overview of number 1. So this was exciting for me as I delved into this because I had like a light bulb moment. And I've been doing this for a while. And so one of the books I want to recommend is Screens and Teens by Dr. Kathy Koch. It's a great book. It's written for parents, but professionals can really benefit from this. Some of the things I'm going to be talking about come from Kathy's work. I'm going to be putting more of a family systems lens to it, but it's a great book. There's a lot of books out there. I highly recommend this and Kathy's work. So let's talk about lie number 1. Now, I purposely color-coded one I because I'm going to come back to this. It's called the rise of self, okay? And so technology is actually fueling the rise of self. And for an adult is not as bad, but developmentally for a child or teenager, this can breed entitlement or self-centeredness or narcissism. And so the first lie that technology really perpetuates is I am the center of the universe. Now, how does this occur? Um, well, in the old days, we used to have to answer the phone. We didn't know who it was. We felt compelled to answer the phone. We took things slow. But nowadays, what you can do is when somebody calls, you can just say, I don't have to talk to them. I can decline them or block them. It's subtle, but not subtle. When you're growing up as a kid, and this is the first generation where you're born with technology right out of the womb, um, that starts to breed a lie like, I'm the center of the universe. I can talk to you, not talk to you. And have you ever seen kids really get really torqued up about likes on their Facebook page? Like it's like somehow that I didn't get enough likes, so I'll reboot the page, and all of a sudden I got 100 likes. Teachers are saying that college kids that are coming to universities right now don't have social skills. And kids will tell you all the time, well, I've got 500 likes. And somehow in their mind, they think likes equals friendship or, relationship. It doesn't. So one of the things that technology has done is it's really accelerated this idea that I am the center of the universe. Lie number 2, I must have choice. Okay. So for a teenager or even an older kid, this isn't the best thing because now they see everything as a drop-down menu. You have choices for everything. It's subtle, but over time, it can become a new normal. So and more, I started family therapy in the late 80s. And we always had debates with kids about privileges versus rights. But now it's an epidemic. So everything now for a kid, and I'm generalizing, is a right. The good news is that technology is their currency. And so it's a motivating factor to do X, Y, and Z. And I'll get more into that next week. Love and limits, parenting with love and limits. But here, in this case, grandmother would say, I need you to sit here. Now, metaphorically, it's like, would you like eggs? Would you like bacon? Would you like to sit here or would you like to sit there? So what happens is developmentally, kids need to understand that there's limits and not everything is a choice. And so that's a lie that I must have choice. Again, the I is highlighted here. The next one, I am my own authority. What does that mean? I am my own authority. Well, what happens is it breeds this here where I can get information on my own. I don't need to seek the wisdom out for a teacher. I don't need to go to my grandparents for information. I can just go to Siri. Any question I want, I can get it. So I am my own authority. I can get my own. Now, what happens is that's bad because kids need parents. They need the wisdom of their grandparents. And parents are saying to me, why aren't my kids coming to me anymore? And while they're saying that the child is on Siri asking about, the weather tomorrow, or, how many inches in a mile or whatever, or how many liters in a, whatever, you got the idea. So line number 4 is that I don't need teachers. It goes closely with line number 3. In other words, information is all I need. That information is all that matters. And I can instantly get this. So I don't need teachers. Like I'm struggling this right now with my 12-year-old pre-adolescent son. Like I'm saying, hey, Jonathan, I have some information about dating. And he's like, I don't need your information. I can just look it up online. And that's a shift. And so one of the things that these lies do is they tend to damage attachment between parent and child because the kid doesn't need you anymore. In some ways, for these core issues that it takes a village to raise a child, but the village is now oftentimes the technology, not the grandparents, the aunts and uncles. I mean, remember the days when would go on through a neighborhood and you would see kids playing outside. Kids would be talking to different neighbors for knowledge and their opinions. Now it's a ghost town oftentimes. The kids are inside, and the parents are too. It's not just the kids, it's the adults as well. So, one of the things that's really changed is that we're drowning in information while we're starving for wisdom. We're drowning in information while we're starving for wisdom. So, kids don't understand the distinction of that. They're like, information is king. But there's a difference between wisdom and information. And that's been a huge shift. So, what does this all mean for us as clinicians, as parents? Well, number one, the age of kids getting cell phones is lowered. The temptation, especially with COVID, even the word that we had with COVID was let's socially distant. We're pivoting off of that into kind of a COVID hangover. But what's happening is that kids, when it's so easy, and I know I'm guilty of this too, where kids can be so entertained. And then my kids got ADD and sensory processing issues. So the technology just ramps up that part and fires that part of the brain off. And so it's just like they're just sucked in because of the chemical issues in the brain, the serotonin levels. So again, what I want to make the point is, and I'm going to be talking about this in detail next week in my 1-hour webinar, is that we have to get to the root cause. Again, a lot of times parents are like, I'm just going to take away the technology. Well, you'll see in the case study next week, they think that's the solution, but the root cause doesn't go away. The root cause in the family I'm going to be talking about next week is around attachment and grief. And that's driving the technology problem. But they're focused on just the surface, like just take it away. But they're not getting to the root cause. It's a Molotov cocktail where I think a lot of our parents and clinicians aren't always sure, like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. The answer is C, above both. And so I'm going to try to tease out this because technology can be the fuse that lights the bomb. Okay. So let's go through a little bit about the family systems trauma piece, and I'll emphasize that a little bit more, and then we'll have some times for questions or comments. Within the context of family systems, here's how these lies pivot with technology to unbalancing the family unit, okay? The first is that, let's say a child is already depressed, suicidal, or anxious. Then technology can accelerate it because now I don't need my family. I have a sense of entitlement. I'm the center of the universe. So that's going to accelerate disconnect attachment. It's going to accelerate a lack of communication. In fact, you see this sometimes when you go out to dinner and you see a family of 4 just texting each other or their friends, and there's no talking, no connection. And it's the perfect storm. So in your chat bar, I'm wondering if you could put in what you think about this, and let me see what you think. So in your chat bar, if you wouldn't mind, put in, do you see this perfect storm as I've laid it out today? That there is a family systemic connection between technology, lies with the rise of self. And the rise of self is that, especially in the last decade, it's more and more I see, what about me? Um, what about me? Self-centeredness. Some of the self has been really good, self-identity and things like that. But sometimes what's happened is that kids have become more and more entitled, or this sense of I'm the center of the universe. And so developmentally, that's not a good place to be, and technology is fueling these lies. And then, like I said, it hurts attachment, and then all the above fuels mental illness. So let me see, um, if you guys, I'll go to the chat bar in just a second to answer questions, but do you see this combination of things, or what I call the Molotov cocktail? I thought it was ironic when I've done research on technology, and I came across a YouTube video on Steve Jobs. And what I felt was really ironic, I guess, is that Steve Jobs was asked by the interviewer after he invented the iPad and iPhone. He said to Steve Jobs, he said, Mr. Jobs, are you excited because now you're the inventor of this technology, and now your kids can enjoy it, your family can enjoy it? And he says, we don't allow the iPhone or iPad in our house, in our home, because we think it's too dangerous for our kids. So ironically, Steve Jobs saw the good of technology, but he was able to also see, the problems that we discussed today, even without having formal definitions of them. So I just thought that was ironic. So, yeah, so let's go and talk about this if we can for 5 minutes, or a little bit longer if you want to stay. This, and for more information on this type of model, this is me, and I hope that you will join me next week to go from why to how, where we talk about these two issues. I family, nature deficit disorder, and we talk about kryptonite. So let's see if there are some questions that we have. And Allison, let me read some of the comments first. I think this is cool. So Bernice says, definitely agree, sure. And then Kristen says, I agree. I think developmentally, kids already feel like they're the center of the universe. So I think technology can reinforce that. And Margaret says, I agree in England. Kids now argue that they have the right. And once at 18, they say that, and the police and other professionals are unsure what to do. So Allison, could I take a couple questions around this topic if I could? And then as I'm answering them, if you guys have some thoughts, please type them in. Allison, hi. Allison's my facilitator helper, and she just has to unmute her phone. So Allison, would you unmute your phone? Let me ask to unmute. There you go. Can you unmute? Okay. So I will answer one from the last one I did this morning, and I'll give some of the questions that came up here. The first one is, how do you pivot? They didn't use the word pivot, but how do you take the 4 lies and what do you do with the information? And so here's what we talked about at an earlier talk I gave on this topic. The first thing I do is I will share with the parents alone, the 4 lies. And for many parents, it's like a revelation. And a lot of times we have success in treatment where we get our clients to think their way into a new way of acting. In other words, insight-oriented treatment. Like, I never thought of it that way before. And what's really fascinating about it is a lot of kids are curious about this too. It's how the information is presented. So the parents are put as the experts with my help. They may read the book Screens and Teens, but then what happens is that the kids really want to open discussion about the pros and cons of technology. So it introduces a new way to talk about it. Okay. In fact, I actually tried this out on my son and I said, what do you think about this idea of you don't need me for information? You could just go to Siri. And we had one of our best conversations. And he was like, Dad, never thought of it that way before, but you're right. I don't come to you for information. So it allowed us to have dialogue that was interesting. And then a lot of times what happens is you have to say to the parents, with knowledge comes more responsibility, like Spider-Man. And they laugh, and I'll say, so now you have to look at the short-term gain versus the long-term pain. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, look, fast forward. If we don't get a handle on this and put limits on it, your kids may not have developing social skills. What's the implications of that in the future? And parents will say, you know what? I'm glad we're having this discussion because right now, technology is one of those issues I want to stay away from. And I say, why? Because out of everything we have in our household, 90% of our arguments are around electronics. And I will say amen to that. I said, I'm experiencing that too. And so how do we remove this? And then they're like, I said, they're going to go into DTs. And so Allison, I'll ask you if you're on, I see you're on unmute. Any other questions that you had? Okay, so we're having some technology problems. So I'll give one more. The other thing is the question comes is now what? Now we have the 4 lies, and now what? So one of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you next week is you have to go after attachment. Now, there's a technique I'm going to share next week that may seem a little bit simple, but it's not. It's called a positive child report. And it's a document that you will show your parents about how to catch their kids doing something right. So you take the discussion out of technology and into relationship. And so that actually is a kryptonite towards that. And then Kristen writes, do you ever talk to families about using technology together? Yes, because oftentimes technology has been one where everybody separates into their own corners. And so when I talk about the I family, okay, it makes people laugh and they're like, we're the I family. And then we say, okay, so right now, technology is isolating you, but how can we use technology to bring people together? And so, for example, I'll just use my family as an example. My son has one of these apps on skateboarding because right now skateboarding is his thing. So now at the dinner table, we don't have technology at dinner, but at the end of dinner, my son can show us his technology and his Instagram where he films himself learning new tricks. And so it just engenders a whole new conversation where we've used technology to our advantage and moved it from something not so good, and we've just realigned it. So great question, Kristen. Well, I've enjoyed today. I hope to see many of you next Wednesday. To just go to that webinar. It's free. You just go to familytrauma.com and it's live or on demand. And I hope to see many of you there. And then I hope to see a lot of you next week, where next week I'm going to take the questions from that webinar and I'm going to talk in our community about the questions that came up. And we're going to talk through some of those questions that came up. So have a great week, everybody, and enjoy the weekend. Take care.